we are sitting here talking about the summer, the vacation, the holiday time, where people have some opportunity to move away for a little bit, not permanently.
Right.
Our term of the day is personal jurisdiction.
Personal jurisdiction.
So,
Not my personal space. Not,
Okay.
This is the concept that when you think about the United States of America, we literally are 50 independent states, and so the question becomes: does the state of, for example, Rhode Island, have any power over me? Can I be sued in Rhode Island? And the question then becomes: well, that depends on whether or not there's personal jurisdiction over you in that particular state.
we're talking civil actions here, not criminal actions.
Well, it actually would apply to criminal as well, but it is more of a civil
Yeah.
concept.
Okay.
And because generally speaking, on the criminal side, it's the site of the crime,
Okay. Okay.
which therefore has personal jurisdiction.
Okay.
But yeah, think civil for this discussion. So what has developed over the years is this constitutional law overlay, and the question is, well, it depends on how much contact you have with the state. So I'm going to pick on Rhode Island because I've never been to Rhode Island. I've been to some other states, but I haven't been to Rhode Island before.
It's pretty small. You may have been to it and never knew it.
Well, maybe, but I can't even imagine what I would be doing up there.
Okay.
So.
Okay. All right.
But when you look at Kentucky, obviously Kentucky has jurisdiction over me and you. Why? Because we're here. We are physically in the state. What about Tennessee? And the question is, well, how often do you go there? Why do you go there? And the courts will look and try to figure out whether or not you've got enough contact. And what they're really looking for, like somebody maybe in your business, are you advertising in Tennessee? Back when you had the station in Bowling Green, there might have been an argument that your radio waves were intentionally going over there. You were selling services over there.
You had clients there. You
Had clients there.
people that worked there or something.
There you go. So you're doing business. Tennessee would have had jurisdiction over you as well. Now, where this really comes up, though, for what we want to talk about, is what happens when I'm driving through a state. So I'm on my way to Gulf Shores. I'm going to go through Tennessee, and I'm going to be in Alabama. Do those states now have jurisdiction over me? And the interesting thing is, yes, they do. And it could be for even broader than me just kind of driving through. It could be if I'm there and someone were to actually serve a lawsuit on me, they kind of get me. I'm there and they got me. I'm in the state. And if you're there, if you're physically present, boom, there's personal jurisdiction. Or if you're in a car wreck, you're traveling down I-65 and you get in a wreck in Tennessee. Now what's going to happen? Can Tennessee, is that the state that has control, if you will? Is that whose laws are going to apply to that wreck? And the answer is yes, because that's where you are. Now, what gets really sort of complicated, though, is what happens if, and we're going to talk about this a little later, I'll just leave it as a question. What happens if I'm in Alabama and I get into a wreck with somebody who's from Alaska? Where is going to be the court that can handle that case? Is it Kentucky? Is it Alaska? Is it Alabama? Is it all three? Or is it Rhode Island? So that's what we're going to talk about when we get into the next part.
So personal jurisdiction, I guess we could sum up by saying it depends.
It depends. That's with most things in the law. That's right.
Law and life.
It's a gray area.
Well, that's a good question, because you would think in an accident, but again, in a civil matter, you reside in a state. If the other party resided in another state, it really doesn't. I would think it doesn't matter where you have that incident.
Right.
But unless traffic laws would be different or something.
Well, and that's a good point. But see, we also, when you get into some of these civil cases, it's interesting. You have what are called choice of law provisions. So me and a person from Alaska might enter into a contract, for example. Let's take it away from a car wreck, but it's a contract. We might agree that we're going to apply Tennessee law because the horse industry is a good one, actually. In the horse industry, there's a lot of very specific laws that relate to taxation. And I used to do a little horse work back when I was in Lexington. And when a horse leaves the state of California on its way to Kentucky, we used to draft the contract to say the second the wheels of the plane left the ground, now it's out of California, Kentucky law applies, that's when the transaction happens because then it changes the tax law. So parties can get together and choose laws, maybe, maybe not, again, it depends, but you do get into all kinds of weird, in addition to the jurisdiction, but then also what law is going to govern.
Contract.
Contract.
Yeah. You know, you've talked before about the fine print in contracts that an insurance policy is that
Right.
when you look down there, it'll say many times this will be any differences would be adjudicated in a court of law in whatever state the insurance company really wants it in, or maybe they're headquartered in.
Yeah, and a good one is the cruise tickets.
Yeah.
If you've ever bought a cruise ticket, it says on the back in the fine print, number one, you can't sue them at all. You can only arbitrate. And number two, you have to arbitrate in Miami, Florida. Well, where's the epic, where's the center of the cruising industry?
Yep.
It's Miami, Florida. So, they get to pick the judge and the jury, and they're going to it's going to be favorable to them. But you agree to it just unwillingly.
When you make that purchase.
Unknowingly, I guess, yeah, when you make that purchase.
All right.
So, let's talk about, with people traveling, you're in Kentucky, you're on I-65, and you get into a wreck, and it turns out the three people involved, one of them's from Indiana, one of them's from Tennessee, or we can even go further because it's the summertime. A lot of folks from Michigan are coming through, headed to sunny Florida. Boom, they're from Michigan. What's going to happen, and what do you need to do different? So we've talked before about how the bad guy, the person that caused the wreck, ultimately that's the person that's going to have to compensate you for your damage. So they're going to have to pay to get your car fixed. They're going to have to pay to get your body fixed. Any past medical bills, future medical bills. If you've had to lose wages, miss work, they're on the hook for that as well. It's going to be very important, though, because they're not from Kentucky, that you really do a good job at the scene, if you can, of getting good information. You're going to want to make sure you don't just sort of swap names and numbers with these people if they're from out of state. Make sure that you get the police involved first and foremost so that they have to give the officer actual identification, some sort of government-issued ID. Because they're in Kentucky now, if you go to sue them, where do you want to sue them? In Michigan? No, you want to sue them in Kentucky. Number one, it's where you are. It's going to be easier for you. Number two, it's where all your witnesses are. Most likely you're going to go to the doctor here in Kentucky. That's where we're going to be able to show what your bills are. Probably your job was here in Kentucky. That's where we're going to be able to show how much you had in lost wages. So it just doesn't make any sense to go sue them in Michigan. But keep this in mind. You can always be sued where you live.
Okay.
Period. For anything. So we could, if we wanted to, go to Michigan and sue the person in Michigan for a car wreck that happened in Kentucky, if they actually live in Michigan. And that's the same to us. Anything you might do anywhere in the United States, because Kentucky always has personal jurisdiction over us because we live here. Now, for those reasons I said, though, you wouldn't want to go to Michigan. So then you sue the person and you sue them in Kentucky. The first question they're going to say is, wait a minute, time out. Does Kentucky have personal jurisdiction over me? I'm not from Kentucky, So no, I don't have any contacts with Kentucky. I've never been there other than that one day. I don't do business there. I don't advertise there. I just don't have enough contact. And we have a law, and they call it the long arm law. And if you can imagine, it's the long arm of the government reaching out and dragging them back to the state. And what the law says, and you people probably don't realize this because other states have the same law. If you voluntarily drive your car into our state, it's kind of like the cruise ship. You've just agreed to a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't know you were agreeing to. And one of the things you've agreed to is that you can be sued in Kentucky for things that happen in Kentucky while you're in the state driving. So,
You know, we've talked many times about distracted driving, Kentucky's law, no texting while driving.
right.
Does that mean when you cross the state line, I don't know what Indiana's law is, I don't know what Tennessee's law is, but does that mean those people have to observe
Our law.
our driving laws? So I have to observe our speed limits, I would assume they would.
Yes, and they have to observe all the other laws as well. And,
Okay.
and one that gets us Kentuckians a lot is, Chicago's only a 6-hour drive.
Mhm.
In Chicago, you're not allowed to talk on the cell phone.
Right.
Not hands-free, you're not allowed to talk on the cell phone. And they will ticket, and I hear it happen to people all the time. And their first word is, well, I didn't know that. Well, there's a famous phrase that we all know: ignorance of the law is not a defense. You're presumed to look up the laws of the areas that you go.
Yeah.
Now, of course, nobody does, but
And sometimes they're on highway signs. But,
Yeah.
But those are not really easy to observe at 65.
Right,
at 70,
exactly.
In Chicago.
And digest
Yeah.
it and figure it out. So, absolutely, they have to comply with our laws. And so the good news is, if you're in a wreck and they're from out of state, you can sue them right here in your hometown because they consented to personal jurisdiction by driving into the state. So now let's take the other scenario that we talked about. You're down in Gulf Shores, you're backing out of the parking lot at the hotel, and bam, you have a wreck with somebody from Michigan. So you both are in Florida. They live in Michigan, you live in Kentucky. Where can you sue the Michigan person if you have to? Let's say there was some injuries there. Well, unfortunately, you're now not going to be able to sue them in Kentucky unless you can show they had, for other reasons, personal jurisdiction with Kentucky. Maybe they have a lake house here or they have a job here and you just didn't know that. So your two places that are going to then be narrowed down to, number one, where they live.
Mhm.
So you can always sue them where they live, so you can go to Michigan. And the second kind of golden rule is you can always sue where the accident happened. So you're going to be able to do it in Florida as well. But so now, and I don't know if Florida has this, but what about PIP? Remember, we've talked about PIP.
Mhm.
That's a Kentucky thing. There's a couple other states that have it, but that PIP allows you, regardless of who's at fault, to have $10,000 in coverage to apply to the people in your car. Does that apply in Florida?
I
Any
don't
idea?
know. You're the lawyer.
Shoot, I was hoping you could tell me. No, I really had a question. No, no, it will, because that's part of your contract
Okay.
with your insurance company. So you're going to kind of get the benefit of whatever your insurance policy was,
Okay.
even though you're in a state that may not have that same requirement,
Okay.
if that makes sense. But again, think this through. You're in Florida. It's not your hometown. It's somebody from Michigan. You're not going to be able to sue them in Kentucky. At that point, collecting the evidence, or at least preserving it and
Mhm.
being able to get back to it, becomes critical. You've just got to get everybody in that parking lot's name and phone number, because they're going to be from all over the place. And if you don't have it, we're not going to be able to find them and bring them into court or get affidavits or whatever we need to do. You're going to pay attention. I've had this happen 2 or 3 times. People get hurt on vacation. They go to a local sort of Instacare clinic.
Mhm.
Which one? Oh, I don't remember. Where was it? Well, it was in Destin.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I looked them up. There's 35. Which one? And it's just sort of that. I know it's not the thing on your mind. What's on your mind is getting yourself better.
Mhm.
But at the same time, for us to be able to do you a good job, we just need that information. So I know it's silly, but use that cell phone. Take pictures. If you're in the ambulance riding, get a picture of the ambulance. We need to know which one it was. A lot of cities have multiple ambulance companies. We need to know where you're going. We need to know just everything you can think of, especially people's names and addresses and telephone numbers. So get it. I can't stress that enough.
And be very careful.
And be very careful.
Because
Yeah.
it's not fun or easy, and I know it's never fun, but to do that right here in your own hometown. But
Let
when
alone
you're trying to do
on
something,
vacation.
you've got a vacation, and you've got to come deal with it, and there's hundreds of miles between you and.
Yeah, it does make
Yeah,
it tough.
yeah.
So the other thing that comes up then too is, what about a rental car? So let's knock on wood. It's an accident, but you didn't get hurt, which is great. But your car's totaled and you're in Florida. What's going to happen? At the end of the day, the person that caused the wreck is going to owe you not only to fix your car, but to get you transportation while your car is being fixed. But here's where a lot of folks have trouble. You can buy on your insurance policy a rental car rider, if
Right.
you will, that says if mine's out of shop or out of service, I get a rental car paid. But if you don't have that, it's up to you to pay for the rental car.
Mhm.
And that can be a tough expense.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of folks, you've saved up, you're on vacation, you've kind of spent your money, if you will, and now what do? And unfortunately, the insurance companies know that, and it gives them a big leverage, because if you plunk down your credit card, you get a $500 bill for a rental car for the week, and a one-way rental is a lot more expensive, or you're having to tow your car from Florida to Kentucky or whatever. They make you front pay a lot of that stuff yourself, with the concept being you'll get paid back when the case resolves, but now it's a bill you got to pay. And so there's a real incentive for you to get that case resolved so that you can get that money and reimburse yourself. So I'd encourage you, really look into whether or not you have that rental car coverage, and maybe even put it on for while you're going on vacation. You know, it's probably the kind of thing you can add it for $10 and go on vacation and then take it back off. It would really be money well spent. And I know, even the flip side, I know a lot of folks might even rent a car to take on vacation.
Right.
Get a little bigger van or something so everybody in the family can go. Look into, does your car insurance, number one, cover you while you're in the rental car? And then we get into this fight all the time. Let's say you've got car insurance and you go rent a car, and you go ahead and pay for the rental car insurance that they try to sell you while you're there. Who owes PIP? And then you get into a fight because they each start saying, oh, no, it's not me, it's you. No, it's not me, it's you.
Yeah.
And who cares? You're not getting paid, you're not getting your wages paid, and your medical bills are sort of sitting out there. And so priority of which policy covers can be a problem. So it's always good to know that before you go in. Talk to your insurance company and ask them, hey, we're going to be renting, we're going to be in Florida, we're going to be doing this. Am I covered all the way around? And I would want to know from them too, you know, what's going to happen if, while I'm in Florida, the car gets totaled? Is it going to be fixed down there? Is it going to get towed back home? What happens to it? Because it's not, I don't know about you, but I can't afford to spend the whole other week on vacation waiting on the car to get fixed. You know, and I'm sure a lot of folks are that way, so you just don't know what's going to happen.
And it's not very cheap to haul a vehicle very far.
I wouldn't imagine. The one-way tow truck from Florida would be probably more than the cars were.
And maybe put it on a boat or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and just one other thing, the reminder to our motorcycle friends out there. Summer's here, it's great to get the bikes out and be running around. Remember, there is that problem with PIP and motorcycles. So, for a car, it's automatically there. It's not the case for a motorcycle.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, since the PIP has to pay the first $10,000, if you're in a motorcycle wreck, you're even an easy one is still going to skin you up, and there's going to be some bills. But the problem is, if you haven't put PIP on the motorcycle, bad guy hits you, he gets off the hook for the first $10,000 in medical bills because you voluntarily went out on the road without PIP coverage. And it really can make a case tough, because let's say you end up having, for example, $15,000 in medical bills. And you're going to say to me, but Chad, you always say the bad guy has to pay for all those medical bills. So you would expect his insurance company has to pay $15,000 plus some amount for your pain and suffering. Well, they come out and say, no, we only have to pay $5,000 for the medical bills because we get to take that first 10 off. But we will pay you another $7,000 for pain and suffering, so we'll offer $12,000. Well, that's not enough to pay back even the medical bills.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden you're in a situation where there's no money to go to your pocket at all for anything because it's all going to medical bills because you didn't have PIP.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those little gotchas out there.
Yeah. Just be sure and ask. You can, I guess you can be overinsured, but it's, you want to make sure that you're not underinsured.
And exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
plan on the fact that I think everybody else is probably underinsured,
Sure.
so protect you and your
Exactly, yeah,
family
yeah.
and make sure you've got that underinsured coverage, that uninsured coverage, and that kind of stuff.
Go with the assumption that they're uninsured.
Exactly.
Or totally uninsured.
Uninsured, exactly right.
All right, how do people find McCoy and Heaston Attorneys at Law? I know there's
Well,
two different places.
There's two different places, so they can walk down the street from the radio station to 114 South 3rd. Be glad to see you down there. My partner Sheila is in our Louisville office at 108 Browns Lane, which is sort of over by the St. Matthews Mall, St. Matthews area. We have 1-800 phone number that rings at both offices, and that's 800-254-4444. So feel free to give us a call. We're on the web at mccoyandheaston.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. I'm hopeful you can find us.